Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome once again to RCI Mondays, and it's time for another region-locked car choice. And once again, we are visiting the Nurburgring in Germany to bring you round 4, 5.13 kilometers in length, 17 turns. I'm your lead commentator for tonight, John Dalton. Alongside me is Callum Kerwin, with Stewie behind the cameras, and of course, next door to us, as always, the live stewards. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, John. Nurburgring, so this is going to be very interesting. I wonder if we're going to see another top two of Audi dominance. Obviously had different Audis finishing 1 and 2 in the previous rounds we've had all season. I was looking at the results earlier and quickly realised that Audis are running away with this Euro Masters Championship.
Yeah, definitely so. Last time out, obviously at Hungaroring in a very mixed condition session, we saw, once again, you said, an Audi dominance in the guise of Rafael Malho and Hugo Kolot this time taking 1 and 2. Pavlo Povlichok coming in third with the Porsche for the Barless Esports team, and a massive margin, like you say, Callum, being built up for the Audi boys with a constant domination. But of course, more on that later. We round out of practice provisionally. We're looking like a strong Porsche top three at the moment. Porsche in 1 and 3. Lamborghini surprisingly in 2 as the results pop up on the left-hand side of your screen. And the first Audi we get a mention of this time, Andy Boardman in P4, and then a joint of BMWs in 5 and 6. So kind of very open this time, Callum, as you said earlier in the pre-race show. Obviously, practice results kind of mean nothing in a sense. It does give you a good kind of etch on where to sit. But this man here, Hugo Colot, of course, running away with the title fight at the moment.
Yeah, I've been out testing in real life motorsport all this week, and I'm out again tomorrow. And it just reminds you that the testing times really don't mean anything. These guys could be just messing about. I'm sure they've all been warming up all week for this and getting a little bit of practice in on the Nurburgring. Obviously, not the full Nordschleife version. We are waiting and praying that ACC release an update with that at some point, so we could do maybe an RCI event on that. No, the normal GP version. Interesting you mentioned that it has 17 turns. On my track map I have here, it only have 16 listed. So this is going to be a bit interesting.
Yeah, I think I took that information from in-game. So, who knows? Maybe please fix, or maybe John Dalton, please wake up and read what you're typing next time. Because clearly I'm wrong. There are 16 turns at the Nurburgring, and Hugo Colot just halfway around the lap now at the bottom of the hill into the Dunlop curve. Of course, up ahead is the Mac S's. Typically a very tricky set of corners, very easy to upset the cars. Porsche's pendulum effect normally throws them off one way or another here with any sudden kind of input on the throttle or brake. It can be very easy to upset, and yeah, I think looking down the list of popular cars, should we say, this week during the LFM races, the BMW M4 looking the strongest with an ideal lap time of 1:53. The Porsche 911 G3R, of course, 1:52.4. Mercedes AMG Evo 1:52.5. Lamborghini Huracan again 1:52.5. This car here, the R8 LMS Evo 2 1:57. And lastly, out of our field tonight, the Ferrari 488, the 1:52.9. So Ferrari's probably going to be struggling here at the Nürburgring. But we now ride on board with Hugo Colot for the number 14 race team. Of course, down to the first turn, the Yokohama S, very hard on the brakes, downhill braking zone. Got to kind of watch you don't catch yourself out during the slipstream fights. Carrying a lot more speed in there can be very detrimental indeed if you do miss your earlier braking point than you expect. Be very careful. Track limits here. Turn 2 in the AMG Arena, and now turn 3 feels like it goes on forever. Got to keep it very close to the left to flick it back towards the right to maximize your run out of the AMG Arena and down to kind of latter half of turn 6. Now turn 6, make it as wide as you can. Of course, cone's already gone in the opening lap. Tuck it very close to the inside. Use the camber of these two corners to kind of suck the car through. Get really good drive out of turn 7 down to the bottom of the hill. The Goodyear curve, I believe. Dunlop curve is 4. See Dunlop boarding on the left there. Again, downhill braking zone, very hard, very cambered corner. Some drivers take it in a 2 apex stage, so they kiss the first one, run it up the banking, back down the other side into the second apex. Other drivers turn hug the inside line, should we say, and use the camber of the road to get themselves through. Bouncing over the curbs, Schumacher S can be very tricky, as we said on the opening lap. Very easy to upset the car, although Colot making a great job of it here. And now up to the top of the hill, turn 11, or flicking back to the Bilstein curve of turn 12. And it's going to be crucial to get a run out of here because you have such a long run down towards the Ad Van Bogen and the Vidal chicane, and a little squirrely for Hugo Colot, so could impact his lap time, although still just over 11 minutes to go on the timer, so still plenty of time to get through yet. Now through the Vidal chicane, very careful on the anti-cuts on the inside, can jump the car kind of off the road into the grass on the left-hand side, then you suddenly find yourself aiming towards the Nordschleife section. Out of the final corner towards the BMW M Power Bridge, underneath he goes for a 1:53.852. Of course, we read out some reference lap times earlier, so probably improvements to be made here as Pavlychuk for the Team Ballas Esports car. Of course, very good in practice, does not set a valid lap, I believe, at the timeout, so he will have to go again.
Yeah, Pavlychuk's lap didn't look like it was valid there. We've got Nico Kumpu on a 1:54.935 is the next best challenger in the first round of laps. Other people such as Pedro Marquez and people like that are setting lap times in the mid to high 55s into the 56s, but these guys obviously all warming up as we see Andy Boorman in one of the Audis that we expect to be strong because they always are in this championship, coming across the line. Yeah, put in I believe that was a 155 147, so pretty much on the pace. Obviously, Hugo Collot is kind of running away a little bit. As I say that, Marlow crosses the line and improves and goes 3/10 behind, so he'll be in the low 54s here. And we've got Dan Edferson as well. The BMW said was going to be strong, jumps straight up there in the nearly a 54 dead there, 54.007. So these guys are trying to make it competitive straight out the blocks. Obviously, track is on optimal and is very warm today. 27 air, 33 track, but with cloud cover. We'll have to see what the weather conditions are like before the race, see if there's any chance of rain.
Yeah, of course. And speaking of the race, for those of you who aren't familiar to the format, we race on Mondays. Obviously, the qualifying session being 15 minutes long gives drivers plenty of time to find a bit of free air to set their laps. Great view here from Jordan Daly's splitter cam heading up through Macca S's. And the race format we run is a 1 hour sprint race with a mandatory pit stop. And for the pit stop to qualify the rule set, you will need to take a minimum of 1 litre of fuel during the 57-minute pit window, and tyres are completely up to the drivers. So, of course, very hot track, as you said tonight, Callum. 33 on the surface, 27 in air. If this condition obviously keeps up, despite it being very overcast, very warm here today at the Nurburgring. Could see tyres maybe coming into effect here. Of course, if drivers do, take the tyres, it's going to be at least 30 seconds on the lane, and they make up the 30 seconds over the kind of 30 minutes. If you split the stint down the middle, was Jordan Daly now crosses the line with a 155.132. Shoots himself up into P10, but still not going to be happy with that one. I think Daly is going to have some improvement there. And Hugo Collot, this man here, looking like he is running away at the moment, Callum, with a 153.560. Closest car being Pozniakov, 0.372 behind. Still quite a big window between first and second.
Yeah, quite a few of these guys now on laps. I assume they're all slow laps because they're all invalidating. So probably getting out of the way of the cars behind them that are running a bit quicker. But yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, harking our minds back to the Super Trofeo Championship, which seems so long ago now. We obviously saw people setting their fastest laps right at the very, very, very end of the session. These guys seem to be able to just come out and set them straight away. Obviously, the track starting on the optimum setting is probably helping them. Collot here on a lap that is another 10th up as we cut back down to 19th. That's Joe Dorber, who is about 6/10 up on his lap. So let's see where this jumps him up to, see if he can gain any more positions on 19th place. Jumps up into 12th, still 1.3 seconds off the pace though. And about a second off the best Porsche of Pozniakov as Chris Downing comes through the last chicane here of 14 and 15, hits the brakes into turn 60 the final corner. This corner here, see how close you can get to the barrier on the right-hand side and hug it. It seemed like he had a little bit of a snap there on the preview as he comes up to the line. Is any improvement on P8? No, Chris Downing stays P8. I believe that lap by Pozniakov was invalidated, so he's probably backed out of the lap now. But yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. We've got yellow flags on track for a car pulling over. Jordan Daly comes up to the line in P11 again. Lots of guys finishing laps now. No improvement for Jordan Daly. So, but we've got quite a few Porsches up there, and that Lamborghini of Marquez is still up there, only 8/10 off the pace.
Yeah, definitely. Porsche looking strong in practice, as we touched upon at the start of the broadcast. And the Lamborghini somehow kind of mixing it up with those guys as well. So great to see. Hubert Hauser comes across the line now, does improve slightly to a P16 with a 155.262. And another yellow BMW coming to the line. Matthew Kingston Lee currently sits 14th. Comes towards the line under the bridge, and he does improve greatly indeed, up into P10 with a 154.865. Roskam comes across the line, gaining 2 positions with a 155.420, and that kind of ends the little stream of cars we've got kind of gathering on the track map at the moment. And Pozniakov here, Andrei Pozniakov for the Team Barlas Esports car, the number 86. Be very careful on track limits coming out of the AMG Arena. Very, very easy to run that a little bit too wide and fully invalidate your lap. He now comes down the hill in turn 6 Wants to keep it very clean indeed for 7. Very easy to upset the Porsche as we steering wheel movements constantly twitching on exit. As soon as he gets the power down, the Porsche rear end wanting to kind of kick out, fire him out of the corner. We know Porsche very good on brakes, very good on corner exit, and you've got kind of a lot of those types of corners here. Turn 1, obviously tight hairpin. This turn here at the bottom of the hill, the Goodyear curve or the Dunlop curve, depending which kind of area you're looking at, up through the Schumacher S's. A little wiggle of the steering wheel as he straightens it up, but nothing too major. Using all the track space available, all the extra curves, all the extra AstroTurf as he now comes towards the final sector of the lap. A little bit of traffic ahead. Joe Dorber, I believe, the car ahead, not on a valid lap. As you look to the right-hand side, anybody with a blue dot against them is, of course, not on a valid lap. And you see in the mirror there, Joe Dorber getting way out of the way of Pozniakov as he comes through the Advan Bogan up to the Vidal chicane. Going to be very tricky to keep this clean through here. The Porsche not kind of used to bumps, a lot of dust being kicked up ahead from, I believe, Tudor Budu in another Porsche. As now comes towards the Hyundai end curve for the final time, wrestling the steering wheel as he comes all the way over the curb and some more towards the line. Pozniakov currently P3, stays P3, does improve, but not enough to improve position, Callum.
Yeah, it was quite close between those last couple of laps of him and Marlow there. Lost quite a bit of time going through the last corner though. It was 2.5 tenths up originally. He was going into the last corner. I think just that car had that bit of dust probably put him off going through that. As we cut to Andy Boardman in P9, number 70 Audi with his rather iconic livery that he always runs, running into the final corner. Some drivers do run this corner quite deep as well. Some really like to hug the inside and go for a dangerous run, clipping the pit wall, being obviously a mistake that some people can make if they're not paying enough attention. Nico Kumpu here, running in I was going to say running in an all-black Ferrari there, because I couldn't see the streaks of metallic gold on that car. Really love that livery by Nico Kumpu. Very nice design. Down in P14 though, not usually where we're used to seeing him. Maybe he's used to being a bit higher up in that 256 Ferrari. Is he on a lap that looks like he's improving? Yeah, he's half a second up in the lap so far. So a clean final corner here. He's lost quite a bit through that final corner. Good couple of tenths there, and that jumps him up to P10 there. 1.2 off the pace as we rounded to 3 minutes ago in qualifying. So probably a couple more laps for these guys if they time things right. Lovchuk here coming through and 3.5 tenths up on his previous best, coming down onto the back straight. Again, traffic ahead of, I believe that's Matthew Kingston Lee in the brightest yellow car we can possibly see. So we know where he is on the circuit at all times. He shouldn't gain any time on this traffic. I think they're all on racing laps here. And Lovchuk still 3 tenths up coming through this last corner. Let's see how that affects him. Lost a little bit of time through the chicane and braking for the hairpin, really gaining some time through here on the apex speed, but losing it a little bit on exit. He comes up to the line. This should be enough to jump him a couple of places, and it does, overtaking the BMW of Edverson into P4. So we've got Audi, Porsche, BMW, and Lamborghini in the top 7.
We keep saying it, don't we, in the Euromasters, Callum? It seems like you get blocks of manufacturers and then this kind of random area where you've got a good assortment. So like you say, looking down, you've got 2 Audis, 2 Porsches, 2 Beamers, split by a Lambo, a Porsche, an Audi, block of Ferraris. Was going to say a block of BMWs, but that order has shuffled since Gajda jumping up into P11, Kumpu down to P12. A block of BMWs again, sole Mercedes and a Porsche, another Mercedes, block of BMWs, and then a kind of block of Porsches again, split by Audi. So it does seem very balanced between some manufacturers. Big arm movements from Hugo Kolot through the final chicane, sets himself up now for a run, maximizing the exit of the Hyundai N curve as he comes towards the BMW M Power Bridge. Underneath he goes to begin what will be his final attempt at improving a buffer to Rafael Malho, although still 0.235 for Malho to gain. A little bit of traffic ahead in the form of the 86 of Pozniakov, although Kolot's going to know that Pozniakov can gap him and will gap him maybe a little bit on the lap, so shouldn't impact him too much. Very own RCI Les Stevenson here in the Proton WEC styled Porsche. One of your favourite liveries, I believe, Callum, in the field at the moment. Coming up to the Schumacher S's over the kind of entry curve, shall we say, through there nice and smoothly. No big dramas for Les. Looking towards where he resides at the moment in P26. Not looking like a great place for Les to be. Some 4 seconds off the pole time. We normally expect Les to be at least inside the kind of top teens, should we say, kind of around like just outside the top 10 areas. He now comes down through the fastest corner, flat out right-hander, sixth gear. Of course, Porsche winding its head off as it comes through. Marquez behind in the Lamborghini, not going to want to be held up by Les, although Les well within his right to take his lap to the line. Of course, a little bit wide, Les goes, still valid on the timer. Comes through the final corner, a little bit of a wrestle from Marquez. Les kind of runs himself over to the right just to avoid him, but still manages to get to the line. And no improvement from Les Stevenson, so really struggling with the Porsche here today. Andy Boardman up into P7 with a late lap stuck in, a 154.3. Cassiaro, a man who ran very well at Hungaroring, one of the kind of dark horses, we almost said in the broadcast. We weren't really expecting him to be so high up, but really gelled with the Porsche so far this season. Currently resides in P9. Massive improvement up into P6, just behind Dan Edvardson. Splitting the BMW duo of Everton and Downing there, and Pozniakov now to the line. No improvement to be had from him. Hugo Kolot across the line. Massive improvement from Kolot. Again, very much cements that pole in the bag. And Chris Downing for the Volpers Simsport BMW now comes towards the line. The number 23, currently P7. Small improvement up into P6. But that lap from Kolot wasn't really needed, Callum. It was just a kind of big, here I am. I can still go faster. I've still got pace in me. What are you lot going to do about it?
It was a bit needed because something that we didn't know was Edverson was on a lap that was 5 tenths better than his previous best. That would have put him potentially up there battling with Kolot before he invalidated the lap, I believe, somewhere in the middle sector. But yeah, so Kolot still needing to push in the last couple of minutes, but now it just looks like he's showing off compared to the field. He's really gapped them 4 tenths to the next quickest car, but then really close from second, third, fourth, all within a tenth or two of each other. So it's quite a tight battle here as we see Tom Shipson in the Ferrari jump up to seventh on the end of that lap. Really good improvement from Tom. Nice to see him battling up well inside the top 10. Yeah, but Cassiaro and Shipston really and Edverson there really sort of outperforming their cars. Sort of jumping right up with the usual guys that we see at the top of the two Porsches, the two Audis, and people like Kingston Lee and Boardman up there as well inside the top 10.
Definitely so, Callum. We say it every week. Once again, nobody claiming all 3 sectors to their name. Not even Hugo Kolot for pole. Got them all, though very close between himself and Downing on sector 3. So BMW looking super strong through the third sector. So be careful for those there. Round down the qualifying results, of course, the Audi duo on the lockout, Kolot and Malho. We then got a Porsche team fight here with Pozniakov and Pavlychuk. Then we've got Edvardson, Downing, Shipston, Cassiaro, Kingston, Lee. Boardman make up your top 10. Then got Marquez just outside the top 10, although looked very strong in practice, couldn't quite convert it in the qualifying session. Nico Kumpu, Joe Dorber, Pavel Gajda, Richard Withall, Jordan Daly, way out of where we'd expect to see him down in P16, so all eyes on him for the race. Dixon Chen, Stevens for the RPMS Simsport boys, Roskam, Callum Spence, Hubert Hauser, Rudy Filmolter, John Aracer, Tudor Budu, Koiret, and Les Stevenson round out your full grid for tonight. And quite a big window going on here as we now flick towards the championship results so far. Hugo Kolot streaking ahead with 140 points. Rafael Malho with 123, his nearest rival. Chris Downing on 96. Nico Kumpu somehow on 81. Very strong points there from Nico. Joe Dorber on 80. Pavlychuk on 78. Tom Shipston on 75. Andrei Pozniakov on 74, Pavel Gajda on 65, and Pedro Marquez rounds out your top 10 with 63. Sol Lamborghini entered. Then have Matt Stevens for the RPMS Simsport team on 60 points. Then have Matthew Kingston Lee on 56, tied with Cassiaro also on 56. Andy Boardman on 53, Dixon Chen on 7, Martin Lindrup, who I believe is ill tonight. All the best to him. Hopefully we get a speedy recovery next week on 46. Tudor Budu on 45, your Lamborghini Super Trofeo Silver champion there. John Aracer joined with Rudy Filmolter on 38 points apiece. And Dan Edvardson rounds out your top 20 with 36 points. Moving on to page three, Les Stevenson, the last man on the grid tonight, not where he wants to be with 35 points. Richard Whittle on 32. Poiret on 28. We then have Verstraeten on 26. Jordan Daly on 25. Carlos Calatayud on 23. Roscam joint with with Charlie Spence, on 19. Hubert Hauser with 17. Stefan Berner on 11 points. And that rounds out your top 30 drivers. Onto the final page and everybody with a dash to their name. So Bosch, Rachinov, Allen, Tornberg, and Stevenson, not to be confused, as of course that is Will Stevenson, have all signed out of the championship and take no. This is where, of course, now we turn down to Stewie on the grid, where we have a kind of quick run through some of the liveries, some of our favourites on the field. I do particularly like that Audi on pole. The colour combination works really well with the contrasting white and blue. Yellow Audi of Malho on the right-hand side, and then a Barless Esports kind of lockout on the second row of the grid. So kind of eyes on them, Callum, if they're, acting as gunner. Maybe one of them might open the door for the other. Maybe they could work together to see how far they can other through the race. Of course, when you start battling with people, that's when you start losing time, and a very competitive field behind them. The likes of Everton, Downing, Shipston, Cassiaro, even the dark horse on your right-hand side in the 54. Kingston Lee, Andy Boardman there. P10, not usually where we see Boardman, we'll be honest, Callum. So another driver to keep your eye on there. Alongside him, Pedro Marquez, another one. So it seems Nurburgring's a bit of a twist at the moment. It's thrown a lot of drivers kind of backwards that we're expecting more forwards, should we say.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't usually expect people to be 4 seconds off the pace in this split. I don't know whether Les is having some issues there with setup or just really not liking the car in these conditions, or maybe just didn't have enough time to practice this week. Obviously, these guys are super quick. Some of these top guys are people that are representing esports teams, such as Barless Esports, people that we're seeing in the 6-hour endurance series for the €11,000 prize pool that we've got going on in the next few months. Obviously, had the first round of that at Kyle Army last week or so now. But yeah, so hopefully a speedy recovery as well for Lindrup. Only obviously one day on the field in the BMW, but Tudor Budu quite far down as well. Yeah, as you mentioned, some of these Porsches really struggling at the back end of the field. Phil Malta, Budu, Koirat, and Stevenson, especially as you've got people like Polovchuk and Posnikov all the way up at the top end fighting the Audis.
Yeah, of course. We've got a good kind of skill range in the field for the Euromasters, should we say, but a lot of drivers kind of not where we're expecting to see them. The Porsche drivers particularly struggling at the back there. Les Stevenson, Koirat, and Budu, like you say. Normally expect those guys to be a little bit higher in the field. And while we get 5 minutes before it all kicks off, as it normally does, a quick message, of course, from all of our partners that help us here at RCI TV and obviously RCI in general. AK Esports, a leading Italian company in esports management and organization across the world, founded in 2005 and has since established itself as a reference in not only the esports sector, but of course the hardware sector as well. I believe they can help you at all, including server solutions, which they do here for us at RCI. Of course, head on over to their website and check them out. Driver61.com. You can, of course, get 25% off your driver coaching by using our link in the description below and heading on over to those guys. Of course, if you don't want to end up on the stewards reports, might be worth taking a note of that. Fanatec, of course, for their excellent sim gear, obviously sim racing hardware, force feedback wheels, pedals, etc. You could, of course, find an affiliate link down in the description below, and it won't cost you a penny, but some of it does go to us here at RCI. And, of course, our two new partners for this year, digitalmotorsports.com, offering a number of products and services from virtual experiences to an early drive program in conjunction with BMW themselves at Mondello Park, esports championships, driver training, simulator components, and even complete sim rig solutions. Believe they can help you with any of your needs, then do go and check them out. And lastly, of course, Go Setups, formed to be a premium esports setup store for ACC. Their primary aim being to complete setups for all skill levels, whether you're esports ready or looking for a safer alternative. And every time I plug them, I always mention they have a Jaguar pack. And I'm waiting for the day somebody pulls it and manages to stick it on pole in an event I cast. That's the ultimate dream, I think, Callum.
I better get practicing then, though, because I haven't driven ACC in a very, very long time. No time at the minute for that as we stay on this rear wing. I just wanted to mention I love the little Belgian flag that Colot's got on the rear wing of that Audi. That's really clever.
I've
Nice to see.
never
Yeah,
noticed that before
never
until you
noticed it
pointed
before
it out.
until
Yeah,
I was
it's
sat
great.
staring while you were busy shilling at the rear end of his car and had nothing else to look at other than the Belgian flag. That's really clever. Petition for more people to put flags in funny spaces. I noticed, I think it was Lindrup in the BMW, or it was Edverson, I can't remember, or both have the Danish flag on the end plate, which is a really nice little touch as well. Nice to see that some of these guys working really hard on some of their liveries. Obviously, we have a couple of favourites. Maybe get Kingston Lee to work a little bit harder rather than just selecting yellow on every single option.
I think
Uh,
he needs a big yellow taxi graphic file that he can overlay over that thing, and it'll just look like a New York cab
we
revolving
re-
around.
Yeah, Kingston Lee, if you're watching this, please do. As we come up to the line, ready to start. Quite a long run into the first corner. Two Audis on pole, two Barlas Esports Porsches behind, waiting to go green, and it's green here. It looks like a good jump from Marlow on the left-hand side. Flash of the lights here as they stream down into turn one. It's going to be 2x2 into turn one. Looks like one of the Porsches of, I believe, Pozniakov here has got a better run, and he hangs it all the way around the outside. Is it going to be three wide into turn two? Nope, two Porsches and two Audis, still 2x2 here, as we've got, I believe, maybe it's the black and green BMW. I believe that is Chris. Sorry, not Chris Downing. That's Edverson there, battling away and really wide on the exit there, battling away with one of the two Barlas Esports Porsches as the timing screens sort of try and reset themselves, going through the long left-hander of turn 6 down into turn 7 now. Who's going to get the run out on the into the hairpin of turn 8? Two Audis still side by side, John.
Yeah, I can't believe these guys still side by side, halfway around the lap now, near enough, as they now swoop through the curve. It's Malho to the inside, I believe, on that one. Kolot ran up the banking, but managed to defend well. Up into the Schumacher S's now. Drivers finally sorting themselves out in kind of single file. So we've got Kolot leading, Malho leading Pozniakov. Edverson has managed to split the Barlas Esports Porsches from Pavlychuk, Downing, Cassiaro, Shipston, Boardman and Nico Kempu just snuck into the top 10 in the Ferrari. But now looking back from the rear wing of Hugo Kolot, of course, with the cleverly placed Belgian flag all over the curb. He's trying to break the toe already of Malho. He doesn't want to give him an inch of an advantage. He knows he's still within the slipstream range, just about in the Audi R8 LMS Evo 2 as they now rock up to the Vidal chicane. Be very, very careful on the anti-cut curves on the opening laps. Cold tyres. Cone goes flying over the field there, down all the way into P6, I believe the cone went. I'm very unfortunate for that one. Didn't last too long, but Kolot now with the cleaner run, looks like out of the Hyundai end curve towards the first turn, and we now see early pitters already. We've got Jordan Daly, Nico Kumpu, I believe Chris Downing also in as well. So all eyes towards those guys, because of course they'll be what is essentially first on the road after the pit stop. So it's kind of a good kind of place to gauge how they sit, maybe wanting to get out of the mid-pack fights. We see it a lot in the Master Series, Callum, where people pit early, they get a nice kind of bit of clean air, and then they end up just pounding in laps for basically 56 minutes or so, and then suddenly find themselves back within the top 3. So it's a good strat to take, providing you're not that quick that you end up catching traffic before the traffic, of course, pits. With a very mixed strategy here tonight. No tyres to be needed, although we do require the drivers to add 1 litre of fuel. So what a lot of drivers do, Callum, is stick the litre in and then keep going.
Yeah, a lot of drivers taking that option. We were debating earlier whether people might try and take tyres. It's hot enough that, you know, if you're a bit too aggressive at the start, you might wear them down. I believe Chris Downing in the Chris Downing, I believe, or was it Andy Boardman who made the pitting early strategy work really well at the Hungaroring last time out. My memory's fading me. And something else to have note: John Eraser down in 15th place with a drive-through penalty already that I don't believe was issued by the stewards. But I'm imagining that was a start. Yeah, so it was a wrong grid spot. So whether that get rescinded. If it's a mistake by the ACC system or not, we will wait and see what the stewards do. But keep an eye on that. If that disappears, we shall have to wait later in the lap, see if he takes it or not. Maybe he thinks it might get rescinded, as we look here at Pavel Gavda in the 924 BMW, the Project Dream car, right on the back of the Porsche of Marquez there. As we see quite a few cars pulling to the pit lane. Dixon Chen, we've got a BMW ahead. I believe that was one of the Porsches of was it Joe Dorber? Yeah, Joe Dorber in the 777 there. And Marquez still ahead somehow of the BMW of Pavel Gazda, despite the efforts to dive down the inside in turn one. We also had Matt Stevens there in the 77 Mercedes, the AMG GT3, trying to dive down the inside of the BMW. So again, another thing we see here as they round through the Mercedes arena, cars in the sort of third place in the train, making the most here of the opportunities as one car maybe tries to overtake the other. As we look back on a replay of Richard Whittle getting passed, I believe in T1 by the BMW ahead of them. I believe that was the 924 of Pavel Gazda again. So good race start here by him. As we cut back, Richard Whittle here, and sorry, it was Hauser and Whittle battling away. Spence, and Whittle battling away. So Whittle making the pass into one. Those two BMWs are very, very similarly liveried as they come up through the Porsche curves. Someone's kicking up spectator. That's Les Stevenson spinning out there and involving Roscam and Tudor Boudous into the wall there. So that's quite a lot of damage here. Les Stevenson beached in the gravel on that curve there. I think he's lost it all by himself, or was that maybe a little bit of a touch there from the BMW behind? I think that Porsche does have to lift coming through the Schumacher S's, so maybe just not expecting the closing speed. Obviously, that rear engine acts like a pendulum.
Yeah, I've driven the Porsche here a few times, and let me tell you, if you lift off ever so slightly on the transition through the Schumacher S, the rear end goes, and you have no chance at all to catch it. So I wonder if Les, like you say, wasn't quite expecting the closing speed, lifted ever so slightly, or just kind of lifted to keep himself out of the gravel, and then found himself turning around. Roscam behind, nowhere to go, and of course just plowing into the back of him, and Boudou being what is essentially an innocent party there. But I'm sure the stewards will be taking a look at that one as Charlie Spence goes defensive on Richard Whittle around the outside here, side by side through turn one. Of course, the inside then becomes the outside for two as they head into the AMG arena, and once again Richard Whittle does make the move stick on Charlie Spence. So 273 still down in P15 overall, and we now come to the front of the field with Hugo Colot and Rafael Malho still locked, kind of splitter to diffuser, shall we say, and all the meanwhile they're towing Pozniakov away from Edvardsen. These guys racing very smartly indeed, not wanting to kind of bow because they know Edvardsen does have very good pace in the M4, the M4 being one of the stronger cars to boot at the Nurburgring this week. From posts on the internet from various people in the community. Race in LFM. We look back now from the diffuser of Hugo Colot to the front of Rafael Malho. High beams ablaze, wanting to try and make that Audi as obvious in the mirror as he can, trying to put Hugo Colot off in every turn. Obviously, one small mistake when you're racing within half a second of each other is very detrimental indeed, but everybody keeping it very clean as they head through the Advan Bogan up to the Vidal chicane. Nobody really close enough to make a move at the moment. And looking at the track map, we've got a lot of cars kind of split out now thanks to those pit stops. Nico Kumpu is essentially your driver first on the road now in the 256 Ferrari, and we see him just heading the field in the bottom right hand corner there, just behind the 699. We've then got a few battles going on down there between those guys that are pitted. So that's, of course, one thing you don't want to do as we now look. Pozniakov is sizing up a move maybe on Malho. Down into turn one, gets very close to the back of the Audi. Maybe just trying to make a mistake and outbrake himself into turn one. And we see the great run the Porsche gets out of the slow turn, nearly able to draw alongside as they head into the AMG arena. And Malho using every single inch of the track that he can to keep Pozniakov behind him. The Barlas Esports car looking very competitive as we now jump inside the car with Pozniakov. We see him wrestling the wheel there, trying to get every kind of steering input accurately as he can. heading down the hill towards turn 6 and 7. Both drivers keeping it very clean. We know the Porsche is good on the brakes. We know the Porsche has good corner exit. And that's what Pozniakov is going to have to work on as he runs himself down to the Dunlop curve with Malho and Kolot ahead. No driver close enough to make a move yet, but I think the Porsche is going to get it on corner exit somewhere at the Nurburgring as they suck themselves around the bottom of the Dunlop curve, turn 8, trying to get the best run as they can as they head up the hill into the Schumacher S. Flick it left, flick it right. Be very careful, like you said, Callum, of the pendulum affecting that Porsche. It can really bite you quite hard, but look in the background. We've got Edvardsen lurking, and he brings with him Pavlychuk as well for the Barlas Esports team. So can Pavlychuk keep Edvardsen busy enough to allow Pozniakov to essentially make a move on Malho? Only time will tell, but Tom Shipston finds himself behind the dark horse here, Callum, Cassiaro up into P6.
Yeah, these guys are having a great race. I'll be interested to see if they battle there. Shipston really gaining in that Ferrari through the kink of turn 13, and Porsche, very good car placement. They're going defensive. Obviously being forced to run a little bit narrow there, so isn't going to get the best exit here. Shipston going to dive it down the inside into the last corner. No, thinks better of it. It was really good car placement earlier there by Pozniakov there on Malho. Forced Malho to go deep, just showing his presence with the Audi, and then just Malho going deep, and Pozniakov recognising that and using all of the available track on the left-hand side to get the up and under on that better run to try and make the move here, as we see Cassiaro doing the same sort of thing, going a little bit deeper than Shipston. Shipston just trying to get the up and under run. It's a very easy thing to do in turn 1 to take that alternative line, that later apex, that allows you to also brake later as well. So you can sort of have differing lines through turn 1 depending on how you're attacking, defending, as we see Kingston Lee here defending through the Mercedes-Benz arena of, I believe that's Marquez behind in the only Lamborghini. So Kingston Lee here, Marquez just weaving a little bit just to show his face again. It's all about getting in the mirrors and forcing another driver to go offline, to brake a little bit later or a little bit early, and just allowing you a little bit of space to sort of pull cars alongside and trying to make it work. Obviously then you slow each other down, and as we saw there, Edvardsen really gaining on the top 3 there while these guys were battling. You can see, as you mentioned earlier, the differing lines in through the hairpin at the bottom end of, I believe it's turn 8 as we come up to the Porsche curves here. No opportunities to pass through here unless you're absolutely insane. I said that last week and got proved absolutely wrong by somebody though. Somebody please try and stick it around the outside into the Porsche curves. Preferably not Pavlychuk though, because he has a lot more to lose up in 3rd place. Again, is he going to try and get a run into the last corner? Really not really a great overtaking spot on this hairpin. It's a bit too quick. Obviously, the slower hairpin that's in different track configurations is usually more preferable for overtaking the Lamborghini pushing the BMW there on corner exit. So, there's a little bit of contact there as the Lamborghini of Marquez, always very aware of the BMW behind, but maybe not actually, as he clips into the BMW on exit there. The BMW sort of holding the line and has broke the wall on the inside into pit entry. But Marquez here will be able to take his pit stop and fix any damage immediately. So no having to drive around with a broken car as we cut back to Pozniakov there in turn, I believe that's going into turn 3, the long left-hander that, as you said, feels like it goes on forever. Still trying to overtake Marlowe, probably just sizing up where he's quicker down though, John.
Yeah, definitely so. Probably just trying to make his point that he's there, he's close enough to make a move should a mistake happen, but probably all the meanwhile studying where Malho's Audi is slightly stronger, where it's slightly weaker, where he might be able to maximize a corner exit and pull alongside him into the next one. But yeah, it's all going to be very tricky for Pozniakov and Pavlychuk to make their moves on their opponents. And the Barlas Esports team, not great at scoring this season, it seems. They've had a few very strong qualifying results, but unfortunately turned a little bit of unluckiness in the race. Doesn't quite kind of equal, as we speaking of unlucky, Matt Stevens across the rear quarter of Gadster and then into the back of him as well. Not sure what stewards are going to think of that one, but we're going to have to see, as it now turns out Gadster does get the position back from Stevens, so the stewards probably going to be looking on that one in their decision making. And speaking of which, we do have a few stewards' decisions coming through from our head steward tonight, Jake Boswell. Incident on lap 1, turn 2, involving the 64 and the 957. Minor contact, no for action. Position turned as we Speaking of positions, we now have Shipston and Cassiaro side by side through the Vidal chicane. Not somewhere where you normally go side by side. You saw the Ferrari bounce its way wide, and all the meanwhile, Andy Boardman behind is just kind of chunking time out of these guys as the positions switch back again. Cassiaro ahead, Shipston behind, although Shipston, like, he's got slightly better run out of the Hyundai N curve, I would say. Down into turn one, going to force Cassiaro on the defense. Shipston to the outside, of course. Outside becomes inside for two if you can make it work, but the superb drive of the Porsche out of turn one, just not to be. Moving on, incident on lap one, turn two, involving the 96 and the 99. 5 seconds for the 96, overtake with contact. And lastly, so far, incident lap three, turn one, of the 182 and the 924 racing incident, minor contact. I think we're going to see a little bit of contact there. Rudy Philmolter going around on that one with the 99. So that's the 96 and the 99 with the 5 seconds explained there for Roscam. As you see the 5 seconds in red next to his name, he can of course elect to take that during his pit stop. Any driver that does pick up a time penalty after pit stop will of course be added on to their race time at the end. As we now see Nico Kumpu and Joe Dorber coming to clashes into the AMG arena. Dorber just about had the nose of the Porsche up the inside. Kumpu tried to turn in and didn't expect the snout of the Porsche to be there, although positions swapped, and Stewart probably will be taking a look at that one as Pozniakov now looks closer than ever. And just ahead we do have some traffic, I believe in the form of Les Stevenson. Correct me if I'm wrong there. It looks like a dark green Porsche, but Kolot is going to be the first person to come across him, and it is Les as Stewie flicks the MFD on the left-hand side for us. Thank you very much indeed. Into the Vidal chicane. Les is going to want to stay well clear of these guys into the last corner. Kolot to the inside, Les to the outside, and I think Les is just going to lift enough to let 3 of these cars through, although not to be. Over to the right-hand side, Les goes. Malho to the left, and Pozniakov will follow him through. And speaking of which, Pozniakov with the fastest lap of the race. So although he's down in P3, Callum, he has got some pace in that Porsche.
Yeah, Pozniakov with the fastest lap, but it is only by about a tenth. So there's still not a lot of time separating these guys. One interesting thing to note that Stewie brought up actually a little bit earlier in one of our text chats, that it's not really like one car streaking away this race. Obviously, Kolot's got that 0.8 of a second gap, but there's the fight behind him that's holding these guys back. So I think you've got 3 cars on pace here, all to sort of stay with each other until the checkered flag. They will probably pit on the same lap as Shipson gets a real big snap of opposite lock going through that. That's really scary. As we cut back to Pedro Marquez, who I assume has fixed that damage and is running about 6th of the cars that have pitted at the minute.
The Lamborghini.
One, I think he's a bit too close there to the back of Nico Kumpu, but not close enough to make a move down the inside there in that 182 Lamborghini. But yeah, interesting to note as we cut back to the fight up at the front again. Fights up and down the field at the minute as the bit of dirt kicked up there as they came through the Schumacher S down in through the left hand of turn 11 there. These guys really running the edges of the track limits, really just kicking up grass, kicking up gravel, just little bits here and there as they try and maximize every single corner and every single exit. You have to when you're running at this sort of level to just not get swamped by the car behind you, and not close enough here for a move into the chicane. But yeah, these guys looking to try and make it a 3-way battle for the lead, and maybe these two behind need to start fighting and start working together to try and gain some time. And Hugo Kolot could be the first time we see a Porsche splitting some Audis in race results.
Yeah, it could potentially be that, Callum. Of course, Pozniakov looking very competitive behind Malho. Going to have to see how this race pans out. Kolot, although streaking away, slightly bigger lead now, up to a second on Malho. So Malho may be driving himself in the mirrors, keeping his eye on Pozniakov as much as he can. And of course, that's where mistakes begin to make their headway. Kumpu coming under pressure from Pedro Marquez in the Sol Lamborghini after the contact with Pavel Gajda, of course, in the Vidal chicane, sending him off to drive his right-hand side, unfortunately, into the wall. And a couple more Stewards reports coming through. We have an incident on lap 3, turn 10, involving the 96, the 46, and the 624. Believe that could be Les Stevenson. It is indeed in the 46. 46 loses control of the car on the curb and spins. The 96 doesn't have enough time to react. It's the 46. The 624 brakes, so that's two-door Voodoo. Brakes for the yellow, doesn't have enough time or space to avoid hitting. Unfortunately, comes in contact, and driver default or any penalties handed out on that one. We then have lap 6, turn 17, involving the 5 and the 182. Racing incident minor contact. Have an incident lap 6, turn 16, involving the 924 and the 182. So that is, of course, the Pedro Marquez incident we saw earlier on. No further action. The 182 rejoins into the 924 and spins themselves out. So, of course, ACC collision physics, as we know, always a little bit kind of over dramatized sometimes. It's very hard to catch the car once you've had contact with somebody, especially if it's at one of those funny angles where you're already in the midst of losing control and somebody else gives you a little clout and it fires you the other way. So very hard indeed. Very unfortunate from Pedro Marquez there. We've got Daniel Crimson in the chat noting that the BMWs are starting to come good. Of course, you know, tyre wear plays its very lucky hand sometimes, should we say. The Porsches, of course, with the fuel tank in the front, typically very good at the start of the race, although when fuel burns off, the balance changes a little bit. They do tend to slide backwards. Audi R8s, of course, quite sometimes heavy on tyre wear, depending how you drive them. Can be a very oversteery car, as we see Tom Shipston up the inside of Cassiaro to take P5, although Cassiaro on the switcheroo on the way through to the AMG Arena, already ahead of Shipston. Great defense there from Cassiaro, fired the Porsche out of turn 1, used all that rear traction to his advantage and got back ahead of Shipston. So Ferrari a little bit of a slouch out the corners possibly, and the Porsche just goes like a scolded cat when it gets going.
It's a great drive here from Cassiaro. He's driving really well up in that Porsche. To battle off people like Tom Shipson, obviously really experienced driver in Tom Shipson in the Ground Zero Racing Ferraris. We cut back up to the front again for this Poznia car for Malho battle. Stewie obviously has this battle on tap, ready to go whenever he thinks there's a gap in any form of action. These guys are going to be fighting, I believe, for the next 39 minutes straight. Hopefully these guys can keep it nice and clean, avoiding all the commentators' curse as we come to the Schumacher S again, down into turn 11. No look of a move through there from Pozniakov. I can't really see any spot here, John, where the Pozniakov is quick enough that he looks like he might make a move. Maybe if he gets a good exit out the final corner down into turn 1, but I'm not really seeing anywhere where he's closing up massively, and Amalo looks really vulnerable.
Yeah, definitely so. Malho, of course, the Audi R8, very slick in a straight line, very fast indeed. You see that on the run down to the Vidal chicane, the gap that Malho manages to pull out on the Porsche, although Pozniakov then in the turns kind of closes back up again using the advantage of the brakes, of course, of the Porsche on corner entry, and then the rear engine traction coming out of the corners. So it's hard to say, Callum, where they're going to make a move, although one thing that is for sure is Kolot is kind of driving away now. 1.7 seconds to the good that time by over the line. Pozniakov is, of course, just behind Malho, but Edvardsen is now beginning to catch the back of this fight, so it could soon become a three-way as Matt Stevens on the inside of Matthew Kingston Lee. Battle of the Mats here into turn 1, and Stevens gets the job done. Kingston Lee very generous with the room he gave the RPMS car on the inside, and Daniel Crimson noting earlier that Matt Stevens has picked the right livery, Callum, 2 weeks in a row, should we say. That's a small success right there for the RPMS boys.
It may only be 2 weeks in a row, but we'll see if he can make it a hat-trick of liveries up at the final round in Paul Ricard next week. Hopefully he can remember to select the right livery before we go racing next week for the last round of the season, as I said. But yeah, nice to see that RPMS livery actually on the grid for the Nurburgring GP. Obviously, pulled quite a gap there on Kingston Lee, coming out down the straight into the hairpin at the bottom of the circuit at turn 8, lowest point of the circuit, I believe, from memory, coming up towards the Schumacher S. Obviously, AMG and BMW quite similarly balanced in both front engine cars, both rear drive. So see how those two compare as we say, as the fuel burn rates wear off. Obviously, something like the Porsche, where as you've got that engine right at the rear and that fuel tank right over the front axle, it's going to really dramatically change as the race goes on. But still struggling behind, and that green BMW of Edvardsen, that with those interesting grills that BMW have decided to go for, I think it really works on the race car. Don't like it on the road car at all whatsoever. Just edging ever closer.
Yeah, just touching on the grills there. I've worked out what they've done. On the road car, it has kind of slats going across left to right in the grills. The race car doesn't have the slats. And I think the slats are the thing that make it There's somebody I follow on Instagram with an M3 G series, and it looks amazing once you take out those slats. So
Ah,
some people love them, some people hate them, but it has really grown on me, the design of the M43. And of course, speaking of new GT3 machinery, plenty of rumors floating about the community this week about the next ACC update is going to be quote unquote the biggest yet. Some of you may have seen the Ask Me Anything from Waggy over on Reddit, where he answered a few burning questions people had. Of course, we know basically GT2 cars are coming. We know there's a new Ferrari, a new Porsche, a new Lamborghini Huracan Evo. So, of course, next time we run a Euro Masters, it may be very, very different. Instead of seeing Tom Shipston in a 488, you might see him in a brand new Ferrari. And a few Twitter teasers have been posted as well. So keep your eyes out for that content update. And hopefully brings a little bit more variety to the grid. Although I, for one, Callum, I don't know how you feel, would like to see a few more tracks. See.
yeah, it just seems like it's lacking a little bit on the tracks. The track front, you've got a couple that you could think about adding. We need more Asian tracks, please, ACC, so we can do an Asian Masters series that everybody complained about the fact that we didn't include Lexus and the other Asian manufacturers in these series. So Asian Masters DLC, please, ACC, if you're listening and have some time to spare. But saw one of those the new Mercedes AMG Evos at track on, I believe it was on Saturday at Silverstone when we were testing. Really loved it. Really loud. Really loud, actually. I've seen a couple of GT3 cars, a couple of Porsches, a few bits and pieces, an Audi as well, and a Bentley out on track, or in testing sessions. But the AMG seems to be running either something less exhaust wadding or something. It seemed really loud compared to the other GT3 cars I've seen as Tom Shipson tries to move down the inside again. Cassiaro really giving him the space, but that, as you said, that drive of the Porsche out of turn one, he knows he can give up the apex of turn one or go defensive or break a little early and just take that inside line. And he knows he's got the exit on Shipston, whether Shipston decides to hang it around the outside or try and do that over and under technique of braking harder and taking that really late sharp apex and trying to hang it around the outside of the long turn three. But yeah, always really funny seeing GT3 machinery in real life when you spend so much time playing it with it in sim racing games. It really amazes you how big these cars are. The GT3 cars do not look big on screen, but they are absolutely massive. Cars like the Bentley are
Yeah, essentially like a road car, kind of almost pumped up, of course. Wider track on them, more aero, more power, stickier tires. It's very, though it's based loosely on a road car, it's very different in essence. On that one, as the battle still rages between Pozniakov and Malho. Pozniakov just chilling, I think, at the moment. I don't think he's really trying for a pass. I think he's just trying to, upset Malho almost and put him off his game. Maybe try to force that Audi into a mistake. And front runners typically have pitted very late in the session, so I expect this is going to go all the way to the end of the pit window. Maybe Pozniakov could be hedging on the bets that he's a bit faster in the pit lane. Of course, all you've really got to do is get out of the pit lane ahead, and you can go on a mad defensive run, such as Cassiaro is. He's proving the Porsche is more than capable of defending from the Ferrari, as Pozniakov now into turn one, still not looking into turn one at all. Malho runs very close to the apex. Pozniakov kind of goes wide and then cuts in very late and sucks himself right back up behind the Audi for the AMG arena. But I think this won or lost on pit lane, Callum.
Yeah, I mean, even thinking about the battle for the race lead, it's really easy to miss your marks in ACC and just get that slight little bit of pit lane delay on going up on the jacks or with the ignition at the start. It's only a second and a half to the leader. So, this could be a race won or lost on pit lane, depending on how these guys pit. And obviously, the pit window closing, it's a very slim possibility with how close the gap is, but the pit window could close at different opportunities for these guys. One person might get a bit more spooked about how close they are to the pit window and decide to pit a lap earlier. So we'll really have to see, depending on how much clear air these guys get. And also the guys coming back through, Chris Downing heading up that group of cars that have already pitted with a fairly comfortable lead of about a second and a half to Daly in the Mercedes, I believe that is. Yeah, a second and a half to Daly in the Mercedes there. So we'll see how those guys come into play. These guys could be pumping in some decent lap times without any traffic. I'm trying to look on the track map as Pozyakov gets really close there. Maybe a little touch, had to put some opposite lock-ons through that corner. Yeah, he had to lift, I'm being told by Stewie there, for which is the reason for the opposite lock. No touch. Very well done there by Poznikov to keep it at the back end of that Audi. Could have caused a very big incident going through turn 12 as they cut through the hairpin. Still, again, Edverson as Poznikov pulls into the pit lane. So this is going to be an interesting stop here. We'll have to keep a close eye on pit lane times, John, on our broadcasting tool here. Make sure he hits that 50km/h speed limit. A bit late, maybe on the speed limiter. Could have come on a little bit later. Could have been maybe a tiny bit more aggressive. Shipson following in as well, Poznikov. So Shipson deciding to pit as well. Nobody's knocked the speed limit board over. That was an issue at Misano. So Poznikov here coming into the box. Is he going to go straight up here, hitting the brakes? And doesn't look like he's being shuffled about, but doesn't look like he's going straight up on the jacks. Maybe that's just the preview system not showing us that as. So Edverson and Malho are still pounding around. Poznikov, yeah, with a quick stop there. So it looks like he did decent on pit lane and bang on the limiter off out of the pits and come down into turn 1. Make sure you know your braking point now. This is a really important lap for Poznikov now.
Yeah, super important lap. Of course, the outlap where you try and gain the maximum amount of time. So I think Poznikov and Shipston both fed up of looking at the back of their rivals. Of course, Malho at the front and Tom Shipston stuck behind Cassiaro, possibly trying to use their pit stop to gain themselves some clean air and see where they come out on track. Matt Stevens also into the pit lane, represented by the white P next to his name. He's just left the box, and this is where Malho has ended up towards the top of the hill at the Schumacher S's. Poznikov has slipped behind Edverson, Cassiaro, Boardman, Kingston, Lee. And I think the timing board still to update on that one. As we look to 86, he's of course got the 79 car of Hubert Hauser to clear as well. And Richard Whittle, Pavel Gajda. There's a lot of traffic ahead, Callum. And we know that Poznikov is very quick compared to these kind of mid-pack drivers.
Yeah, very quick. Just an important note here. Poznikov's pit stop time was a 50.366 in pit lane. He gained 5 seconds as we see Marlon deciding not to pit. So undeterred by Poznikov's pitting, Marlo is just running his own strategy. For example, he gained 5 seconds on Shipston in pit lane, but lost 3 seconds to Jordan Daly. So Jordan Daly with currently the quickest time, I believe, on pit lane, a 47-second stop there. So Marlo could gain some time here if he nails a perfect pit stop there. Oh, I'm being told someone was quicker than Jordan Daly there. Kumpu was quicker, Kumpu. Sorry, with a 46.2 on pit lane. So 4 seconds there to gain on pit lane that Poznikov could have potentially gained. So, we'll have to really see what Marlo's pit stop time is. This is going to be won or lost in a pit stop.
Yeah, all eyes to the front now, of course, as Kolot drives away 2.3 seconds to the good. Malho just behind Edverson, Cassiaro, Boardman, Kingston, Gajda, Whittle, Hauser, and then this man here, Poznikov, in P10 overall, of course, represented by the green board next to his car number of the 86. Of course, anybody with an orange one next to their kind of number is still yet to come down the pit lane. So everybody ahead, in theory, still has to pit, although they do still have a 26.5-minute window left to pit. So they have plenty of time to make the stop. And if any of these drivers really wanted to, if any of them are friends with Malho, not sure who hangs about with who in this race, but they could do him a favour and not make it easy for Poznikov to get through. And of course, any time lost will be detrimental to the gap that he had. He was obviously glued right to the back end of the Audi R8, the number 38 in P2. So Poznikov going to have to make some moves. And Pavlyuchok, I'm not seeing where he's ended up either, his teammate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing him running. He's gone.
Yeah, he's not on our timing screen. So don't know what happened with Pavlyuchok there. Maybe a disconnect, something like that. Maybe a hardware issue. Unsure there, unless he got himself into an incident that wasn't repairable. I'll try and find out that one for you, John, while we still watch Poznikov battle around in that one remaining Ballas Esports car, trying to wrestle that 86 round. Obviously, Stewie's mentioning to us it's an interesting decision to pit this early. You're going to be heavier with colder tyres, so he's going to lose some time for sure, because he won't have slipstream as well. So unless he's coming up to lap cars, which is going to be slowing him down, He's going to not have slipstream, so he's going to have cars ahead that are off the pace as well. And he's going to be heavier with cold tyres. So that's really not going to help, especially with that Porsche, with that rear end pendulum effect we keep banging on about here with all these slow corners. So it's really going to be difficult for Pozniakov. He's really going to have to really up the pace and put in a massive effort if he's going to try and pass the Audi of Marlow there. Hugo Collett's still out in front, about a 2-second gap. It's been hovering about that much since Pozniakov has pitted. So he's quite comfortable there. So pretty just managing the pace here. 2.2-second gap to Marlow, as we see on our timing screens now.
Dan Everton here takes your bottom step of the podium provisionally in the green Danish Ronjulans Esports Sim Racing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Limberup, if you're still in chat watching along. It's great to have you with us. And of course, everybody at home, none of this would be possible here at RCI TV without you, the viewers, obviously bringing the numbers to our YouTube and now Twitch channel as well. We are trying to grow on Twitch slightly, so if you are watching, you have not followed yet, would be very much appreciated. And of course, the likes and everything like that on all of our content is greatly appreciated by everybody here at RCI TV. Dan Edvardsen still sticking out in the BMW. The Danish flags on the end of the wing plates, as we mentioned in the broadcast. We have track limit suspections from Crimson on Pozniakov, so be very keen to see how many warnings he has on. Has he got any left? Some drivers tend to bank them in a race, shall we say, and then use them for when they really need them, as Pozniakov now hits the first of the traffic. Hubert Hauser, of course, is he's not going to have to move over. It's not a blue flag scenario. This is, of course, pole position as both cars hop over the curbs. Hauser thinking wiser of it and now calling it into the pit lane for his mandatory pit stop. Probably very smart there, as the Ballas Esports car got very close indeed, and now Pozniakov will be sizing up the back of Richard Whittle in the 957 BMW just ahead. 1.3 seconds to the good, so should dispatch of him within a lap or so, I would like to say. So all eyes on this man here. And while we have a kind of quiet lull, should we say, in the race, always goes a little bit quiet at the midpoint. Just going to run you through what we have going on here at RCI this week. We do, of course, have a few gaps in our schedule. Tuesday being our empty slot since iRacing Championship has finished. Wednesday this week takes our team championship down under to Mount Panorama. Last time out at Spa, JS Motorsport took GT3 Pro. Whittle's Wizards took GT3 Silver, and Team Vaumont lead JS Motorsports and BDG Sim Racing for Pro Honours, while Whittle's Wizards lead Base of Tex from Red Kings Motorsport for Silver. Thursday is now another empty slot as well, since our British GT Championship finished last week, with myself taking GT3 honours from Andy Boardman and Tom Bryant. Meanwhile, GT4 was taken by Harry Conway from John Aracer and Joe Dorber in third. And Friday this week continues our sprint challenge for season 10, with round 1 winners being Martin Lawrence from Christoph Verstappen and Yaroslav Roth. Round 2 heading to Imola this week on Friday. And finally, Saturday Night Owl has finished as of last week, with Alex Rogers taking the honours on championship win from GT3 Pro. Timothy Flamger and Joe Dorber once again in third. And meanwhile, GT3 Silver was won by Michelle Multaney from Alexander Orlix, and Damien Lowe taking third. So great to see Damien mixing up somebody I've known for quite a while through another Discord server. I'm just about clenching on to third. And of course, if you like the sound of any of the events we run, or like what you see here on RCI TV, you can of course head on over to our website, where you can sign up and pre-qualify for any of these events at any time if required, by heading on over to racerci.com. And now back to the action. Pozniakov has dispatched of Richard Whittle, and next up on his list of targets being Pavel Gajda. 4.5 seconds to the good, Callum. So he's got a little bit of clean air to get the hammer down on that one now and try and find some time.
Yeah, so Stewie was saying he's been losing a couple of tenths every lap, and while you're saying there's a quiet point in the race, all is not well. I found out the cause of the Polovchuk failure, which was a random disconnect. And unfortunately, thanks to his provider and ACC, he cannot reconnect to the server. So Polovchuk's race is over. And reports from Marlow that he's having a lot of CPU over usage from ACC. And he had a freeze of his USB ports at the start, but now seems to be working. So all isn't well in the in the sim racing worlds for some of these guys. So hopefully Marlow with no more issues. However, I have thrown that commentator's curse at him and thrown it quite hard. So
You've
we'll have to
definitely
see
thrown it
what's
there.
happened there. Hugo Collett, though, still 2.2 seconds in front of Marlow as they come under the BMW sign across for the start of yet another lap. And Edverson there still in the background, 1.4 seconds off the pace of 1.4 seconds, sorry, behind Marlow there. So it'll be interesting to see where these guys come out compared to Pozniakov. Could Edverson potentially make a jump if Marlow manages to hold him off? Potentially, maybe if what we're thinking about Pozniakov's pace is correct, but then obviously Pozniakov will have not fresher, but more up to temperature tyres compared to these guys if we think they're going to pit on the last few laps, as we think they do. He's going to have to really throw it around for those last 2 laps, where these guys are going to be on ice cold tyres compared to Pozniakov's nice warm green tyres as Hugo Collett comes down into the hairpin of turn 8. Really just controlling the pace here. Just got Marlow in his rear view mirror, probably just a flash now and then every so often on the straights here, such as we come up to the Schumacher curves here. It's going to keep on going and really just focus on hitting every apex point, every braking point. This is the really hard part of the race now for someone like Collett, who's leading. You've just got to focus so hard, and it's so easy for it to lose slip and make a tiny little mistake. That's going to cost you so dear when you've got people like Marlow, Edverson, and Cassiaro up in P4 behind.
Cassiaro being the dark horse, definitely up into P4, fended off Tom Shipston for a good few laps, and now kind of finds himself almost in no man's land. He's got a big gap, car ahead, a smaller gap to Andy Boardman behind, but definitely a great drive from Cassiaro. And Hugo Collett once again staying out, just under 20 minutes to go on race time, just over 18 minutes to go on the pit window. Of course, you've got to come down the lane and cross the speed limiter line before the clock hits 0. Otherwise, your pit stop shall not count. And now Andrei Pozniakov is still trying to chase down the back of Pavel Gajda. 2.6 seconds now to the good. And we're about to come up to another timing line, I believe, where we should see another timing update from that driver as he does cross ahead. Gajda has already crossed the start finish line. No, 2.2 to the good. So still gaining in every sector. Pozniakov is really a man on the mission, as we just saw the back end there of Gajda's car, I believe, just ahead. The kind of black and red BMW there on circuit, and he is encountering some traffic in the form of someone else. I'm not sure that's Matthew Kingston Lee. It's not. It's Les Stevenson in the dark green WEC proton colored Porsche. So Les, of course, is going to be a lap down, probably going to move out of the way. But all meanwhile, Gajda will still be trying to eke his way past Les, and it could, affect a little bit of mid-corner speed, a little bit of corner exit. Pozniakov is now down to 1.8 seconds to the good. Another gain of 0.4. But Pozniakov back to the pits there.
No, that was
disconnect.
No, that was Palovchuk reconnecting. So
that's really confused me.
Internet has managed to decide to let him back in. That was very confusing. A bit of an interesting cut there from Stewie to made us both hearts jump into our mouth that Palovchuk had just randomly jumped back into the pits. No, Palovchuk is 0.4 faster on that last lap than Collett and 0.2 faster than Malho. So he's gaining some time here now in that clear up. But again, it's such an interesting decision because he's still got to lap all those cars ahead. Unless they decide to jump out of the way into the pits, which I bet he's praying in that Porsche that they do. They just sort of part the Red Sea like Moses does and just stream off into the pit lane in front of him, so he's not going to get held up. I don't know. I think a lot of these guys are going to do the same strategy and pit on the last lap. As that's a Porsche into the back of a BMW, and that is Pozniakov having an issue there with lapping the car. He's let the BMW go back in front there, so probably not going to be a penalty for him there, but he's still trying to hang it around the outside here on down to the back straight. But that flash of the lights there, really, Pozniakov really not happy with that, wanting the BMW to know he's there. But the BMW of Gajda in no reason to let him through. He's probably now going to be even putting up an even more stout defence, John, now that he's been touched in the back by Pozniakov on the way through. I believe that was the Schumacher S's or into the turn of turn 11 there.
Yeah, turn 11, I think, just after the Schumacher S's. possibly caught out Pozniakov on how early Gajda breaks. Of course, we do have a very mixed skill level in the field tonight. Some esports drivers tend to know their limits. And speaking of limits, Pozniakov to the inside in turn 1 on Gajda. Gajda goes for the up and under, but we know the drive of the Porsche is just excellent towards turn 2, and a move has been done, although not sure how the stewards will feel about that one. So we do need to watch out in the stewards report server channel. No new updates to bring you. Last update was a good 20 minutes ago, so stewards possibly caught up. It's been a very quiet race for the stewards, I would say. Unlike some other titles that we've ran, Janetta Cup being one of them at Zolder. That was a record-breaking stewards incident report, and I believe they even did overtime that night, so kudos to them. And of course, wouldn't be possible to live steward these splits or any of the events that we do run here on RCI without those guys analysing every single inch of your driving down on the track. Charlie Spence down in P20 at the moment, looking towards Dixon Chen ahead in the number 64 Audi R8. Do love this livery, although I don't quite agree with the name of the team. Let's just say the livery is a very good one. And once again, going back to your point about country flags, on the end plates again of the BMW on Charlie Spencer's car, Callum.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it looks really classy. I'm thinking about the Praga, but we've got a sponsor on those end plates on the Praga, so not going to be able to envelop it for any of our seasons. As Andy Boardman jumps onto the pit lane, I'm glad also that we don't have to do overtime, because I am up early tomorrow morning heading off to one of my favourite tracks in ACC and in real life, Alton Park, for another day's worth of testing as Andy Boardman comes over the humps and bumps of pit lane. So we'll have to keep an eye out on what his pit time is. Andy Boardman currently up in 5th, so I'll keep an eye out on his last pit stop time on our timing tool, as he's already out of the box. So that's a good sign from Andy Boardman here, as Palovchuk still is in the pits. That isn't a Carlos Esports Porsche that's fighting for the lead that's disconnected again. Boardman 46.3, same time as Nico Kumpu, I'm being told in my ears. Really good pit stop there for Boardman, and he's coming out ahead of Pozniakov, I believe, unless the timing screens have messed up. Has Boardman managed to jump them all? No, he hasn't managed to jump Pozniakov. The timing screen has messed up. I was going to say that would have been a mega pit stop by Andy Boardman if he'd managed to jump Pozniakov in the pits. But Nico Kumpu previously mentioned for having a very quick pit stop time. Still battling away with Matt Stevens here as everyone's sort of settling themselves down after the pit stop phase. There's still 3 cars left to pit in that P8 to P10 battle, and then the cars in front as well left to pit, as Pozniakov, I believe, has got past Gajda on the timing screens as well. I've just noticed that car jump up. Marlow in the pit, so this is the time. Time to look for what in the pit stop for Pozniakov was a 50.366. Marlow on the limiter on time, going to be no issues with that. No speeding in the pit lane penalties as he comes over towards his pit box here. Stewie with a...
Oh,
he's slowing really early. Maybe he's not sure where his pit box was, although he should have seen the lollipop man there. So interesting. That's going to slow him down in pit lane. So up and straight back down there for Marlow. So no issues with finding the jacks. But yeah, really weird that he's slowed in the speed there. It'll be interesting to see what he manages to do on the exit of the pit. Pozniakov here, 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 6 seconds. I think Marlow might just about get it there. Same time in pit lane, 0.03 of a second difference there, and Marlow with a slightly faster pit stop still. So wonder what went wrong for Pozniakov. Maybe not stopping on the jacks there, or something maybe a little bit wrong for him in the pits. Because Marlow definitely didn't have an optimal pit stop there.
Yeah, definitely not. And of course, looked like turned off the car a bit too soon and kind of just coasted into the box. So very strange there indeed, as Chris Downing comes under fire from Koirat in the Porsche behind. Koirat still yet to pit in P11, so expect him to slide on back down the order quite soon. A lot of green numbers now in the top 10. We've just got Kolot, Everton, Cassiaro, Kingston Lee, Gajda, Whittle and Koirat left to pit in the field. Everybody else has achieved their mandatory pit stop. Of course, no need to take tyres, although we do stipulate you do need to add 1 litre of fuel into the car for it to be a valid stop. And we do have Daniel Crimson in the YouTube chat tonight. Just curious to know the rough kind of pit stop time, should we say, that the guys are achieving tonight. Of course, our tool estimates from pit in to pit out. As speaking of pits, Hugo Kolot coming down the lane now. So everybody's tool does read a little bit differently. I do have a few different times compared to Callum on his, and Stewie might have different times compared to us two as well. But roughly, you're looking somewhere around the 50-second mark for the worst ones. So Malho hit 50.4, Pozniakov hit a 50.4, Boardman with a 46.2, Daly with a 48-second stop, quite quick on that one. Tom Shipston with a 55-second stop, Joe Dorber 49, and so on and so forth. Matt Stevens with 57, so a little bit slow for him, but they're all somewhere around the 40-ish to 50-ish mark, as Hugo Kolot now comes out with Matthew Kingston Lee alongside him. Kingston Lee gives him the inside line that allows him that free air ahead. So the next car on track for Malho is the 54. If you look to your right-hand side, you can just see on the track map heading down to turn 6 is that 54 car of Cassiaro, still yet to pit as well. As we see Charlie Spence still trying to get onto the back of Dixon Chen's Audi R8 LMS Evo 2 ahead. Both drivers, of course, have pitted, so nothing to be gained on lane time, although the M4 doesn't look like a slouch in a straight line. The Audi is certainly not gapping as much as we thought it would. Its kind of low-down aerodynamic design that it's kind of almost famous for. They now round through the Hyundai N curve for the last turn of the circuit. Have a run down to turn 1. Charlie Spence, of course, in the slipstream of that Audi. He's going to be getting towed along down to turn 1. Can he make a move stick? I don't think he's close enough unless he goes for a very late lunge into turn 1, but focuses on the brakes, nearly runs up the back. It looked like there of the Audi R8 LMS Evo ahead of Dixon Chen. But no move to be had as they now come through the AMG arena in single file. We've got a few drivers still left to pit, Whittle being one of them, Kingston Lee, Cassiaro, and now Edverson on that one. So Kingston Lee is just behind there. You see Malho ahead. So Malho has got out into some clean air, luckily. If he got stuck behind Kingston Lee, could have lost him a lot of time indeed, although now the R8, of course, bringing its tyres up to temperature, whereas Kingston Lee's tyres will be nice and warm and running about 51 minutes solid on them. Just over 8 minutes to go on the pit window. Kingston Lee comes round for another time. 9.5 minutes left in the race, so still a few more laps to be had yet. And Pozniakov now finds himself in P6. Lost a lot to the back of Malho, possibly due to the incident with Gajda, and of course losing his pit stop a little bit there as well with 4 seconds to the good. Richard Whittle finds himself on pit lane. Interesting to see where he now slides down to. Of course, he was towards the back end of the field, although no slouches. Silver Team Championship going very well for them. Koirat finally to pit as well. He finds himself down in P21 now, battling with Rudy Philbolter, so a bit of Porsche on Porsche action. Both cars qualified very similarly indeed, and a bit of a rotten day for the Porsches, Callum. You've got almost five of them at the bottom end of the results board.
Yeah, obviously Les Stevenson and Lovchuk sort of not really being representative of where they would usually be, and Pozniakov really sort of holding it down. Joe Dorber running well in 12th place, though. He's having a good race and probably trying to get onto the back of Tom Shipston, although it seems like quite a big gap. So in a bit of a no man's land there, but Porsche's struggling here at the Nurburgring. Would expect it really with the nature of some of the corners, some of the quicker corners, that they might struggle as Richard Whittle jumps out of the pit with a decent gap behind. So he should be pretty safe from any form of overtakes. It was just every time I watch these pit stops, I'm given a bit of PTSD from being at Silverstone on Saturday with the pit limit. We had an issue of the pit limiter not wanting to come off. It took half a day to diagnose that the car had actually just put itself into limp home mode and wouldn't let us rev past 4,000 RPM. So it was probably the slowest lap of Silverstone National ever recorded by a Prowler, stuck at 4,000 RPM in first gear. It was not fun. It took half a day to diagnose, and someone from Czechoslovakia to remote into one of our computers in order to type some bits of software encoding in and clear us up so we could go and run away in the afternoon. But yeah, PTSD from pit limiters now. So I'm really hoping everyone has theirs mapped correctly. I have seen it. I believe it was an AOR race a few years back where somebody didn't map their pit limiter button and just had to drive around on the limiter. The game auto put the limiter on, and he then could not take it off. It would be the biggest shame if someone had something like that happen to them.
Yeah, definitely not what you want happening to you. Pit limiter, I've seen it a few times, causing trouble. Usually with drivers coming in, either a little bit too hot, of course, in the wrong gear. For those of you new to ACC, if you are in any gear other than the M2 and the M4, I believe, or in the challenge car, any other car in gear 2 will not engage pit limiter. So you've got to be right down into the first gear of the car before it will engage itself. And of course, shifting up to second will knock it out of gear. And might have been victim to that a few times
I
during
was
my
going to say,
beginning stint.
I've done that too as well quite a bit. And
Let's not talk about this. We'll gloss over
yeah.
that. And no pit limited dramas for anyone here in the box at all ever during their history of ACC. And Pavel Gajda looking in the rearview mirror at Hubert Hauser. We've got a little block of BMWs with Richard Whittle just 5 seconds, nearly 6 seconds, sorry, down the road to this one. So battles still raging on, even down the lower half of the field. Hauser probably one of his better results here in the Euromasters today here at the Nurburgring. The livery on that BMW, very good indeed. And I believe possibly another flag M-plated car on that one, as Hauser gets very close to the back in turn 7, nearly running up the back of Gajda. Gajda's certainly going to have a bit of PTSD, should we say, on the kind of brakes of this corner, especially as Matt Stevens already bullied him out of the way, and still Hauser fires it to the inside. Gajda through the gravel on the outside. Hauser drives on. Looks like he lifts off to try and let Gajda back through, and he does. So Stewart's probably going to look at that one and think, well, he gave it back, but he sent it from quite a far way away, Callum.
He also nearly let Gajda drive straight through the back of him. Really not the place to lift off on the corner exit. Expect him to wait a little bit and give it back, but maybe some of these guys are not as experienced with letting people go past. I don't know if that is a flag. Going back to our great debaters' flags, as we see Chris Downing here in the Vulpes Simsport BMW trying to attack Andy Boardman, two very experienced drivers going at it in the Beamer and the Audi. Chris Downing is probably going to try and make a move down into turn 1, just showing the nose there. Andy Boardman cuts him off, says, nope, you're not trying it down the inside of me, and you're not getting any form of cutback. Great defense there from him. I don't think that is a flag. I believe Hauser is either German or Belgian, and I don't recognise that as the German or Belgian flag. It is some kind of emblem though on the end plate of that BMW. More petitions for everybody to put their nationalities on their end plates, please, unless you have sponsors, in which case fair enough. Andy Boardman running with the all yellow end plates, and Chris Downing with the AWS. I don't know why this just suddenly became the end plate show between the two of us. I don't know how that suddenly become a thing, but very interested in what these guys run as liveries. A lot of work put in by a lot of people for these liveries, as our Danish end-plated car leading the race of Edvardsen. Edvardsen first laps led, I believe, in this championship at the Nurburgring. Obviously, he's going to drop down behind the two Audis at least, and potentially the Porsche of Pozniakov, and see where it comes out in relation to Borman and Downing. Could be very close here. So Edvardsen running is probably his best race I think we've seen all championship, Dom.
Yeah, definitely so. I think End Plate Club International coming sometime in 2024. As we bring up the MFD on the left-hand side, shows you the gap to the cars behind, of course. Cassiaro, next one in line, is in the pit lane. So Hugo Colot is what you're going to want to look at. And Colot, look to the left-hand side. There he goes, straight through Edvardsen. Although Edvardsen has jumped Malho in this tactic, of course. We knew Malho was down behind, was ahead, sorry, of Everton in P2. We had Pozniakov in 3, and then the Danish BMW down in P4 before all the pit stops started to cycle. And being told in my ear from Stewie that Everton with the fastest pit stop so far on the board, at least on my end, it reads a 45.8. That's roughly from pit lane beginning to pit lane end. So a very fast time indeed, and it's certainly improved a position or two.
He gained 5 seconds in the pits on Marlow. 5 whole seconds gained on pit lane by Edvardsen. I don't know what Marlow specifically did wrong in pit lane. We didn't see him, I believe, have any issues, unlike Pozniakov, who obviously lifted off quite early. But I don't know what he's done wrong in pit lane, but something's gone wrong in pit lane there for Marlow. As I believe we've seen, Cassiaro hasn't come out of the pits yet on my screen. I haven't got a pit stop time for him, although I believe he is out of the pits. I believe that Porsche is circulating around as the timing screens take their second to update here. Yeah, Cassiaro is definitely circulating around, I believe, but not returning with a pit stop time. Maybe it's a little bit of
the Schumacher S's now, Callum
Yeah,
Cassiaro.
a little bit of a bug there on the old broadcast tool. But Marlow, yeah, Marlow being jumped by Edverson. Edverson's going to split the two Audis at this rate. It's not the car we expected to split the two Audis, but a BMW is definitely in it with a shout of a P2 here. Really good result for Edverson.
Yeah, definitely so. And Lindrup in chat, his teammate in the esports team, definitely cheering him along from his bed or sofa or place of rest, should we say, where he's fighting to get himself a little bit better for more sim racing action. But Edverton, the one to break the Audi 1-2 dominance with a fantastic pit stop. And speaking of BMWs, we've got Richard Whittle here and Gadster still going at each other. I believe Hauser has since dispatched. There we go. Hauser's just in the front of your shot there. Dispatched of Gadster after a very late lunge down into the Dunlop curve. Gave the position back, although has since found his way back past on circuit somewhere. And looking towards stewards, we have a incident between the 924 and the 86. So that was Pozniakov and Gadster. Warning for the 86 for avoidable contact on the 924. And Richard Whittle looks to the inside in the Vidal chicane. Definitely not a place you want to try and make it side by side, although we saw Tom Shipston try it earlier, and it does kind of hamper your run down into the last turn, leaves you very vulnerable indeed. Gadster looked like he's struggling in mid-corner, cutting back there to try and maximize the run towards turn one. And of course, since our leader Hugo Colot has crossed the line, this will be the last lap of the race. Pit window has of course closed, everybody achieving their pit stops, nobody forgetting that it was a thing for this event. Have had it in the past. Team Championship, I believe, where somebody might have forgotten the pit stop was a thing, as Richard Whittle tries the outside into the AMG arena on Gadster. Just about has a nose ahead. If he can stick it around the outside here, the final part of the AMG arena, of course, will become the inside, but Whittle braking, tucking back in, and no, he goes for the move, stabs the accelerator. Gadster cuts the nose off, gets a swooping run around the outside, and Richard Whittle just backing out of that one very sensibly indeed. But this man here, Hugo Colot, followed by Dan Edverson, very closely indeed. Had it been a few more laps, I wonder what Edverson could have done. But Hugo Colot, your round 4 winner for the race esports team, the number 14 Audi R8 LMS Evo 2. Quick weave as he comes across the line. Dan Edverson straight lining it through there. We then got Malho being your next car through. Pozniakov in 4th, just about couldn't make it stick to Malho, although they finished just under a second apart. And the big one here, Cassiaro is coming around the last corner. Kudos to him, takes P5. Great result indeed. Andy Boardman just about fends off Chris Downing again. Had it gone a few more laps, who knows what would have happened. Although Koiret has been passed now by Charlie Spence in the 273 Aztec racing car as they come around the Bilstein curve. It looks like Charlie Spence struggling with the front end of that M4, getting it to turn in there. Could this leave him vulnerable on the GPX racing car of Koiret, the number 85, getting the slipstream off the BMW? We know that obviously the Porsche isn't great in a straight line. It struggles, it does indeed. Koiret tucking in behind the Aztec racing car. 2 more corners to go, jumping over the anti-cut curbs. I don't think he's going to even have a look in the last turn, although it opens up the corner, trying to get the better drive across the line from the BMW, although nothing to be had. Charlie Spence does fend off Koiret for position number 9, 18 and 19. As Phil Malta takes P20. Roskam in 21st after the 5-second penalty he picked up earlier on. Tudor Budu, despite the spin nose first into the wall out the Schumacher S's, trying to avoid a spinning Les Stevenson, comes through to take P22. Andre Dixon Chen, not sure what happened there, P21. He was definitely further up the order. And that just about rounds out round 4 of your Euro Masters series. So the Audi dominance, Callum, finally broken by a Dane in a BMW.
Yeah, really good race there by Dan Edverson. It's amazing. Getting a little thing there from Chris Downing. He pressed the ignition instead of the pit limiter coming out of the pit and lost 8 seconds there. So that was the difference there between him and Andy Boardman, and could have made that position up and been way further up the road, potentially battling away with Cassiaro, though that would have been a great fight between those two of them. But unfortunate there for Chris Downing on that pit limit as we see the final race results. Hugo Colot obviously taking the win. Edverson there with the BMW M4, splitting the two Audis for the first time. Marlow still with a podium in P3 in that 38 Audi. Pozniakov P4. Cassiaro with a great race in P5 in that Porsche. Andy Boardman P6. Downing P7. Daly P8. Tom Shipston is the first of the Ferraris in P9. Kingston Lee in the BMW M4 in P10. Joe Dorber P11. Marquez P12. Stevens 13th. Nico Kumpu in that black and gold Ferrari in 14th. And then we have a host of 4 BMWs of Hauser, Gazda, Whittle, and Spence in 18th. Koirat down in 19th, Phil Malta in 20th. Batches of cars down here, so Porsches and BMWs all grouped together. And if Stewie scrolls down, I can see who's in 21st. But if he stays there, I can't. Thank you very much. Roscam in 21st. Dixon Chen in 22nd. Pudu in 23rd. John Aracer down all the way down in 24th there. Unfortunately for John Aracer, you usually see him a lot further up. Les Stevenson, obviously, with those issues in 25th. And Polovchuk, obviously, not finishing the race, but being able to rejoin, rounding out in 26th.
Some big movers, some big shakers. Jordan Daly being one of them, all the way up into P8 after his slightly miserable qualifying result. So great to see there. Cassiaro, of course, taking P5 again. Great to see on that one as well. So yeah, all in all, a fairly successful round. We didn't have the typical pinch, should we say, of turn 1. Turn 2 relatively clean as well. So not too many, upsets, should we say, with the race start. Stewards with a relatively quiet day, and then got. There we go. That explains the Malho incident. As he came into pit lane, instead of changing camera, hit the ignition button. Why he suddenly died down to 30 kph, rolled into a pit box, should we say, rather.
That will be why. I wonder why he changes camera going into the pit lane. Maybe gets a bit of a better view of where he's stopping.
Yeah, it's the lineup basically where the front end of the
Yeah,
car is.
I haven't seen that done before, but
I,
that's a very clever way of gaining an advantage.
I've certainly noticed Boothby does it every time. He's got a button mapped on his wheel to cycle the
Yeah.
cameras, cycles it to the view, pulls up in the box, right on the marks, perfect pit stop kind of every time.
That's
So
a
it's
great
kind of a
way.
bit of a fail safe, if you like.
Unless you misclick, in which case it's not a fail safe,
Unless you misclick.
and you lose 5 seconds in the box. But that explained the Marlow incident for us very well. Unfortunate for him.
Yeah, definitely so. And obviously the top 30 taking points away today. So Pavlychuk finishing, although down in 26th, still does get a few points for the championship. So possibly why he made it his mission to come back in, even if it was to just cycle around in P26 and, of course, take away some points on that one. But that, of course, rounds out, once again, another fantastic round of the Euro Masters here on RCI TV. And obviously a quick mention to all of our partners, AK Esports, driver61.com, Fanatec, and our 2 new partners, of course, motorsports.com and Go Setups, who help everything here at RCI TV flow nicely and support us where we can. And of course, to you guys at home watching along, none of it would be possible without you. So we do appreciate your attendance very much. And we are running a slightly lower power mode, shall we say, here at RCI TV over the next few months. But of course, we do have the esports series coming up very soon indeed, just a couple of weeks away. Drivers head to Imola for their next tackle for a slice of the €11,000 prize pool. Of course, that will be coming to you guys on the 26th of March, a Sunday. So keep all eyes peeled on RCI TV for that one. And if you have been watching on Twitch, we would appreciate any support you can give us, whether it be a follow or a share. We are trying to grow ourselves on another platform other than YouTube. But from myself, John Dalton, from my co-caster Callum Kerwin, and from Stewie behind the cameras and all the live stewards in the box, we bid you farewell. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and we hope to see you another time here at RCI TV. Take care.